You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder, and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
Welcome back to E-commerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve Hutt. Now, today I'm talking with Russ McCumber, who's the co-founder and managing director of a company called Impressive, and they're at impressivedigital.com. And today we're going to dive into something that I believe has almost fundamentally changed how customers are actually finding and buying products online. I mean, the reality is right now we're kind of post BFCM by the time this episode goes out, and customer acquisition costs have continued to rise. I mean, I think it's all part of competition, and your customers aren't just searching on Google anymore. Like, they're discovering products on TikTok, and they're researching on Amazon, and they're asking ChatGPT, who knows, right? They're getting a lot of recommendations, probably checking Reddit for that matter. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to other places more than just Google, or they're going everywhere all at once. And that's what's interesting. And Russ and his team have been working with e-commerce brands in all different, kind of a GMV ranges from, 2 million, even upwards, some like enterprise brands upwards of $500 million. And what's interesting about, or what caught my attention too, was they have a really interesting approach to their marketing agency. Instead of treating maybe SEO and paid media as kind of completely separate channels, they view them kind of as complementary systems that actually kind of work together. We've had many people on the show that really double down and focus on just the organic traffic growth and potential and call that the best ROI there is. But then you have other people say, well, no, sometimes top of funnel, by having the right campaigns and the right ad creative, we can find a lot of net new customers very affordably, hypothetically. But I think the reality is that trying to figure out a way of blending the both together, I think is a winning directive. So let's welcome Russ to the show. I'm really excited to unpack this today. So hi, Russ, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve, thank you. Great to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. So, like I said, here's what I'm hearing from merchants. Like these ad costs are definitely rising. Number one, because of, Q4, more competition, more buyers, kind of the whole share of wallet kind of situation. I believe in some cases it's crushing them right now. Like CPMs are up. I think conversion rates are relatively flat, kind of as is. So knowing all that, so what's your take on what's actually going on right now in Q4, just based on the clients you have and kind of where the market is?
Yeah. So I think the thing is, a lot of it's timing, the CPMs have been rising for, incrementally year on year for a period of time, and we can talk about the reasons behind that. But I mean, if you started the business in 2017, 18, you could very easily build all your traffic via paid traffic, running Facebook funnels and paying not very much and generating huge ROAS and, probably building and scaling a bunch of D2C Shopify stores in that way using just that one channel. As the CPMs keep rising, as the competition keeps rising, the need for a broader mix of channels, a broader range of paths for people to find your site, to find your product, to understand your brand, to get bought in. I'm an old school marketer myself, so it kind of just takes me back to the old, how can you get the word of mouth out there? How can you build the brand awareness? And then once they're there, with the first time customer, then it's advocacy, it's repeat buy, all these different things, which you can't rely on one channel anymore, whether it's paid or whether it's another channel. So I think we're just seeing an evolution of the market, but you do have a lot of businesses who have been built a certain way, and just year after year after year after year, rather than changing, they're just kind of shrinking their margins bit by bit to the point where, we probably should be looking at a different way of doing it.
Yeah, there was the old word that was kind of slung around, was at Shopify, but omni-channel marketing, and then that just got kind of crushed in saying, multi-channel now, and I think there's even another acronym that's out now, but the whole idea is that the customers don't really follow a marketing funnel anymore, so to speak. There's no necessarily awareness, consideration, and then a conversion and maybe loyalty and advocacy. I mean, there's all these different kind of parts of the funnel. I think some of those topics and and concepts, I think, are still really important. But where the customer arrives to a site and learns about it, like if it's organic or organic social or paid social, it could be word of mouth, it could be through an affiliate, it could be, just going in through some of these AI tools, like going to ChatGPT or whatever, Perplexity and whatnot, and then starting doing some pre-research. So what's your thought about this? I'm going to call this new era of search, but like the search and discovery to lead to a conversion and then a raving fan, everything has really changed lately.
Yeah, I mean, Google call it the messy middle. It's no longer just a simple, get their attention, can go through that process of interest and then purchase. But, people are looking on all different, whether it's their phone, whether it's their desktop at work, whether they're at home. There's a range of different platforms. It might be on television, it might be a CTV. There's just so many different touch points. I remember, I feel like it wasn't that long ago, but we'd say, you're going to need 6 to 8 touch points with a customer before they feel comfortable buying. Like you could get 6 to 8 touch points with the brand in an hour or in 15 minutes across, moving from your phone to your desktop. So the amount of noise that's out there now makes, frankly, brand equity and brand strength and what they call brand marketing these days, which like back in the day, I've been in marketing since 1999 and we just used to call it marketing. Get people to know your brand name, understand what your brand's about. That brand marketing or, working on your brand awareness, I think that's it's really come full circle and people are realizing that you can't just load up your retargeting funnels. You can't just look at performance marketing as a sort of catch-all for everything to drive revenue. Brand recall and having people actually invest in why it is that your product is different, for them from others and what it is that you personally, connect to the why, all of that kind of cheesy stuff. I just think we've sort of come full circle to a point where people realize that we do need to actually invest in our brand in a way that for years and years and years, we just thought this marketing, especially like, if I'm being honest, and I'm someone who's in digital marketing, lots of digital marketers have talked about online marketing. Digital marketing is just like a math equation. You just do this, and then this comes out at the other end. But people aren't necessarily built like that. We have thoughts and desires and dreams, and a lot of the transaction happens inside your brain before it gets to any device, before it gets to any shopping cart. So the way to stack the odds in your favor is to keep on stacking on those brand impressions and keep on, giving yourself an ability to get an imprint on your customers' brains.
Well, kudos to you, though, because to a certain degree, because you think about the fact that you're one of the few agencies that I know of that really looks at the organic and paid not as separate channels. And I think that's what I kind of mentioned at the top of the show. That was kind of in my research. It's just like, hey, that's very unique. There's lots of people that double down on either or of those, but to combine them together and choose and saying, well, what's the overall marketing strategy here? And just so you know, there are ways of dealing with, the SEO organic side of it, or even organic social, but then there's also the paid side. If it's Google and Meta, YouTube, TikTok, I mean, it's endless on the paid side too, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think most merchants either they do it in-house or they work with separate agencies for kind of each of those. So why do you believe maybe that traditional approach is actually costing them more money to hire an SEO agency or to hire a paid media agency versus maybe what you had to offer?
Yeah, and you can see the logic in it. Like as a brand owner, it's like, okay, well, I want the absolute specialists, the best at what they do to look after this. And I want the absolute specialists, the best at what they do to look after this. But then what you tend to have is people who are very, very good at, potentially really good at that channel, but they're also really good at making that channel look better and not giving credit to where other channels are helping support what's happening within that channel. They're good at cutting up data and figures in a way that make their channel, potentially look much more important. I mean, you just look at the way that the ROAS attribution windows look across different paid channels, and they're all claiming the sale for themselves. So obviously there's an inherent selfishness to that kind of one channel only approach, which that's not to say that all agencies that do one channel do that, because I know lots of SEO agencies and I know lots of paid social agencies and etc. that are very ethical and honest and do a good job of going, look, we are a piece of the pie. We think we're a really important piece of the pie, but there are other parts that really help contribute to our success. And frankly, I think for me, myself, I think because I've come from I was a copywriter, then I was in I ran my own events and I was client side traditional marketing, and then I've got into experiential marketing. I've kind of touched on so many different types of marketing that I don't think there's one silver bullet. And I don't think that, and I think it's silly to not realize how much interplay there is between all of the different channels. So if we come back to the point around SEO and paid, which is what we focus on, there's just a real efficiency gain in your teams working really closely together. So whether that is one agency running both, or whether that is at internal end of the client's end, the integration of those and the way that those channels and the people working on those channels work together is going to have a huge impact on your bottom line. So like an example at our end would be just a few weeks ago, one of our paid media leads are working on, it was a sauna product, online sauna, large transaction, right? And he'd noticed that for one particular product which sold really well previously, the retargeting for that particular product was down. ROAS was down hugely. He's trying to figure it out, and then he just went, actually, why don't I open up Google Search Console, because there has been some changes on that side, and then let's see if there's been a difference in ranking. So he's jumped in there. Oh, wow, big drop. Okay, let's go to analytics. Holy cow, we used to get a lot of traffic. So his retargeting funnel, which he was filling from a range of sources, all of a sudden he realizes, okay, this is not working so well. Having that kind of broader understanding of the way the channels play together helped him help the SEOs see the impact of their changes. They didn't realize that shifting resources elsewhere was actually going to have a bigger impact, as big an impact on sales. It gets him to have a better understanding of, okay, well, I can put that budget somewhere else for now while we fix that problem. It's a shortcut, I think, when you've got teams that understand more than one channel, as long as they have, strong communication between those channels. It gives you as a brand, I guess I'm an old sports guy. Like it's a better team approach. We're all rowing in the same direction, as opposed to just rowing one way and wondering where everyone else is.
Yeah. What about these brands? I'll just give an example. Let's say someone's spending, I don't know, like $50K a month, let's say, on paid ads right now, getting 3 or 4x ROAS on it, which is like fantastic. But, costs keep creeping up. And so basically, SEO is being ignored by a lot of brands because it seems like a big long-term play. And so if someone comes to you and says, and they're thinking about restructuring it or having you take a look at their paid social, but then start an SEO campaign to start, how do you become the recommended organic person in your market, in your niche? And so my question to you is that, after looking at this, I'm just throwing this fictitiously out there, spending $50K a month, are you suggesting that maybe there's ways of the paid social ads may not have been as effective, even though maybe they're running a 3 or 4x ROAS right now, but it's creeping up and getting lower and lower? Are you going to identify some weaknesses in their campaigns and going, okay, we need to kind of double down on these, but we need to take some of that budget and apply it towards some kind of SEO strategy? Is that kind of how things are? Or are you kind of saying, hey, we believe you might want to spend a little bit more on the SEO side, but we're going to fine tune what's going on the paid side?
Yeah, so I think we're taking a holistic approach. So we'd look inside the ad accounts. Firstly, let's just see if we're bleeding money anywhere in there that's unnecessary. But with that holistic approach, we'd be looking at channel behavior across a range of channels for an extended period of time, whether that's 3, 6, 12, 18 months, because maybe they had an influencer program last year that was driving lots of top funnel, which isn't this year. Maybe they had a killer organic social producer who just went viral a number of times and went viral in the right kind of way, where it was actually delivering, traffic, which eventually converted. Maybe it was SEO. That's just part of the problem solving, is not necessarily going, okay, they need more traffic, let's work on their SEO, because possibly their SEO is solid. It's sort of going in there with fresh eyes, but with honest eyes. Like, I always like to think, when I'm putting a recommendation forward, I'm pretty blunt with customers. But if I'm going to be forward in terms of recommending something that we can help with, I think, okay, well, if my mum had this problem, would I recommend this solution to my mum? Okay, yes, I would. Oh, no, actually, I wouldn't. I think they're probably, if we're talking about potentially a smaller, let's say it's a smaller, e-com business, and they're under $1 million or under $2 million, because I know we've got a pretty wide audience that listen to this podcast. Maybe an agency like us, with all the bells and whistles and project managers and data analysts is, a bit beyond what they need. But maybe there's a way that they could be getting some fresh eyes on the account, via a freelancer, or, maybe it's some support for what they've got internally. So a lot of the time when we're doing, that kind of discovery and then that audit, sometimes it comes back with, yes, we can help and here's how we can help. Sometimes it's, well, the really strong e-com brands, and this is actually 2025, to be frank, for us from an SEO perspective, has been great because a lot of brands are seeing the CPMs going up. They're going, oh God, there's got to be a cheaper way to do this. And a lot of really strong, growing D2C brands have kind of overinvested in SEO this year, especially with all of the LLMs and everything else. But, having an honest conversation around what's needed and then pointing people either to my team or to other teams, I think is just a better way to do business. And what goes around comes around, and it's just makes me feel a bit better about being someone that people can trust.
Right. Okay. I agree with that. So that would be like a trusted partner. And I really do appreciate that because it's much more than just a transaction. It's just kind of looking holistically at the account and going, okay, well, here's where I believe you're at. And this is what I've seen from my other clients. And at the end of the day, you both want to win together. Like that, it just adds a feather in your cap that you're saying, no, I'm making these recommendations and executing on it. At the end of the day, the brand wins, so I think, there's some synergies there for sure. Now what about when you kind of go, I don't know, when I talk about like this multi-platform or kind of like this, it's just like what happens when people, are a little bit on TikTok organically just to kind of get some little bit of reach, but then they get on TikTok ads or their product is on Amazon or maybe they're, on ChatGPT now with this new OpenAI connection to Shopify and Etsy. It opens up some really interesting things. And it almost seems a little bit overwhelming for some people that are running a little bit lean. So like, what's your thought process? Like, how do you figure out when a brand should choose a particular channel or not? Like, I don't know. I just want to understand the thinking around what's the simplest way to start and test?
Yeah. So even before, I find this part of search marketing and part of just digital marketing in general, the most exciting, fascinating part of being in marketing in 2025. Like the fact that, just 10 years ago, you go to Google for pretty much anything. I want to find out what it is, how to use it, where to buy it. Okay, buy it online. It's top to bottom. You Google it. But, look, 4 children, 1 Gen Z and 3 Gen Alpha. And watching the way that they use their phone, I'm constantly asking them questions like, why did you go to TikTok for that? Or why did you go to Safari or Google for that? What was the intent? Oh, but your sister goes to TikTok for this, or she went to Snapchat. And understanding, whether it's the intent behind their search, whether it's the medium, the format that they prefer the content in, whether it's the person delivering the content, all of these differences, and this is a next generation of shoppers. This is where I find it really exciting for brands to start thinking about, okay, well, where are our customers now? Where are our future customers going to be spending a lot of time? Where are they going to be doing the research and trying, where are we best likely to have our brand touch them at some point? Now, to your question around, so where do you start? Because it can be overwhelming. Sure, it can be. So then you've also got to think about separating the hype. There's a lot of ChatGPT, a lot of LLM hype out there from the reality, which might be that you sell a transactional product, which is a $40 or $50 purchase, which frankly, someone doesn't do a whole lot of research about. They just need it tomorrow. But if it's a bigger purchase, if it's a $500 or $1,000 or a $10,000 purchase, much more considered. Okay, much more research in it. If you think about the way historically you might have built out a program to try to get in front of them, there's a bit of content marketing, there's education, there's probably video, there's a range of things. People are using ChatGPT for that type of research now. So understanding how to have your site technically sound for mentions both in Google, ranking, traffic, but also mentions out of ChatGPT is important for your brand. So really distinguishing your current customer journey, your current buyer journey for people who are buying from you, that will help determine, okay, well, which channels outside of the obvious ones should we be investing some resource in? But then what I've seen is I've been this whole world of multi-platform search. I've traveled all over the US this year talking to some, the world's biggest brands about, how to build programs, how to do it efficiently, what sort of size experiments to run, how to decide on a hypothesis. And I can tell you that some of the world's biggest brands are like way behind the curve on this. But some of those mid-market brands that are growing fast, that are much more digitally savvy, much more tech forward, they're doing a really great job of finding little pockets, whether it's a channel where they realize that there's blue space, blue ocean out there that their competitors haven't seen just yet. So how do we figure out how to get one particular collection of products in front of this particular audience on this particular channel. Really narrow it in. And then it might be Snapchat, it might be Amazon, it might be, it could be a range of different, it could be TikTok or ChatGPT. But having a really defined hypothesis of this product, this channel, this much resource, this much time, and here's what we think we'll get at the other end. That is how these programs start, and then that's how they build. Because you have one little win, you expand it out, all of a sudden you've got this big moat where everyone else is catching up and trying to get more visibility on all these other channels, and you've already got a range of different channels. Your performance marketing is firing because you are ahead of this. So
yeah. This is amazing though, because I know that a lot of brands are really concerned about, a lot of it is their traffic is down a little bit, at least from their organic side. I think a little bit because of AI overviews. There's a lot of people in the SEO world are a little bit paranoid about it. I mean, I have an Ahrefs account, which is more of an SEO tool. And it's interesting how they're now putting AI citations from right within the dashboard now. And so like through AI overviews or ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and Copilot. And so you have all of these there. And so clearly, mine in my media company world, mine's growing in hundreds. In ChatGPT, I've got almost 3,000 pages that are in ChatGPT right now, or at least being cited in there as content that they're using for their knowledge base. So what's your thought about that? Because I think that's the mindset challenge that a lot of brands are under. Like they understand that they've implemented some AI, if it's in customer support or if it's in, maybe they're using AI for on-page personalization engine, or there's all different ways of forecasting models and things that they can use to use AI. What's your thought from a search perspective when you think about AI overviews and ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these different things? I just want to know what you guys think about it, and then how should people be wanting to implement something like this?
Yeah. Well, I will start by saying we would always optimize for traffic first rather than a mention. So there's lots of AEO, GEO, LLM, SEO, AIO. There's all these different acronyms to try to get, how do I get visibility here or visibility there? You know what's interesting? Like if you look at, well, you've got SEMrush, we've got Ahrefs, we've got all of them, but SEMrush has got that graph where it tracks your keyword coverage over time. And it had that little option in it for the featured snippets, which used to be huge. And obviously, since our AI overviews, it's a lot smaller because Google is now aggregating responses and popping it there. The thing is, though, like I've literally seen this on LinkedIn where you see influencers say, well, those featured snippets, they're disappearing. We've got to, move to trying to get mentions, etc. But there was a lot of traffic that came from those. If you can figure out a way, like if you optimize for traffic, if we can figure out, okay, we seem to have held on to these featured snippets, which are generating traffic still. Why is that? And how can we hold on to more? How can we get more of that? Well, everyone else is chasing these mentions, which may or may not get you a link, a mention. And then the click through on those mentions on our AI overviews is super low anyway, compared to like a featured snippet. I don't know. I guess I just come back to, we would optimize for traffic first. Does that mean that we're not looking at LLMs? Of course not. It just means that a bird in the hand, if someone clicks, they're actually going to your site. So I'm going to try to find the shortest route to the dollars first if I'm a D2C site. Once I'm confident that I've got a pretty good handle on that and understanding that, as I said before, especially for some products, you've got a very long, windy journey to becoming a customer. Yes, of course, those mentions are important. But you know what, Steve? I actually can't remember what your original question was, but you just struck a chord then around our AI overviews and featured snippets.
No, just the fact that search is really changing, and that's the crazy thing about it. And I think merchants really are trying to almost plan their strategy right now, and they just, because of all of these fundamental shifts that are changing, they've done some AI, but they don't really know what to do from a search perspective.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, even if we look at the way that we're building out, so I can tell you, 2017, 18, 19, we build content plans for 24 months. And, you'd build the sprints they'd be 3 month sprints, I guess, but very much laddered up to a longer 12 to 24 month strategy, which was planned in advance, which you would just, it was almost like discipline was the key there. Whereas you can't plan 24 months out in advance now. So we're 3 months with an eye on, so the long-term view now is, okay, is this best for the user? Like in terms of the experience on site, in terms of the way the information is presented, does it deliver really good quality for their user rather than, being generic, rather than being non-unique, rather than not adding anything to the plethora of rubbish information out there. And if we feel like we can rank it within this next 3 months and we can build it in a way which is sustainable, i.e. really, really, really user focused with different types of content, rich media, all those different things, then our long-term approach now is more around the user focusedness. It's not a word, but you know what I mean? As opposed to the long-term being planning out a year or two in advance.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, what about like just keep going down this SEO road, like with Shopify? It's just like I know you do audits and things on Shopify stores, and that's kind of like the bulk of my listeners and stuff here. Like, talk about Shopify SEO in general, like, because I think there's typical things of the on page and the off page, but I think there's other parts of the algorithm from a speed perspective and a customer experience perspective and dwell time, and I'm sure there's lots of other kind of like hidden variables that maybe some brands don't think about. Is there any kind of like maybe Cliff Notes or Cole's Notes you kind of like, what sort of things do you look for from a Shopify kind of SEO perspective?
Yep. Back in the day, Shopify used to get as kind of a bad rap for SEO because of the way the URLs are structed in a certain way they don't change. Or,
yeah, I know. It was just...
especially like the old WordPress developers who were like, I can't even do anything. Put me a straitjacket on me, you expect me to try to do my job.
Uh-huh.
But, Shopify and Shopify Plus is growing quite rapidly. The experience on those in terms of page speed, for the most part, is quite strong. How secure they are. Typically, they've got a really, because of the fact they are so rigid in the way that the themes and the templates are built, they do have quite a rigid structure, which, to be frank, does have a pretty good alignment with how the bots looking for SEO value with the site. So, pretty kind of flattened hierarchy, really simple between sort of home, collection, product, shopping cart. So from an SEO perspective, there's not a lot that you can't rank in Shopify these days. I'll say that much. One of the challenges a lot of brands have is when they decide to move to Shopify, and then you have those kind of migration
migration
headaches.
issues, canonicals,
and just different structure, lots of different things. So that can be, if it's planned well, you can mitigate a lot of that risk. The challenge happens when you've got a website developer, a dev agency, engineering agency who brings in, if you're in a good place and you're lucky, they'll bring in an SEO agency or an SEO person in the last month. And a month's not a lot of time to unwind a lot of stuff, which you probably should have thought about 3 months earlier. So ideally, depending on the size of the site, you kind of want to have that SEO lens on it at least 3 months before you're going to go live, because some of those changes you could make before the site migrates. If you think about the migration, when we think about mitigating risk with the migration, we're always thinking about, this is going to be a huge change for Google, as it is going from platform to platform. How do we minimize that friction and the amount of change as much as possible? Okay, let's just try to get it as one-to-one as possible at the time of migration, which means some of those best practice SEO things that your SEO agency is telling you to do, they probably need to be done in small batches afterwards to minimize the risk.
I've been around for a lot of migrations to Shopify, and I was at a former agency too, and we kind of did the same kind of thing. There is some foundational things which you get instantly with like SSLs and mobile themes, and and you're on a fast CDN and sitemap generation, all those kind of basic things. You get all that. I think there are SEO friendly URLs and stuff. They're going to be different than your, let's say, old legacy platform. We're doing proper 301 redirects and being really mindful and doing the research ahead of time. That especially depends on the size of the site, but one for one and doing that, you're still going to freak Google out anyways on the migration. 20 to 30% of your traffic is just going to be poof gone instantly until they kind of like recrawl it and kind of understand it and going, okay, this is not some kind of craziness going on here. This is actually legit, and it takes time to kind of regenerate. In a lot of cases, do even better, because I think what happens is over time, I've seen is that brands then feel that they now need to create a better content strategy, because a lot of the technical optimizations are already done, like canonical tags and schema and all that stuff is already done there. You can add a few apps though. I mean, like Plugin SEO or SEO Manager or whatever, ConvertMate. You can add a few things on, I think, which may help a little bit from a title tag and meta descriptions and some on-page things. But for the most part, I think Shopify, they're definitely gotten better than in the past. But it's quite interesting. I think, but there are some advanced tactics that I think that could happen in the future too, about leveraging AI and thinking about collection filters and dynamic groupings. And you can do a lot of crazy stuff if you really want to go down that rabbit hole.
For sure. But I mean, whether it's Shopify or WooCom or, Magento,
Big
whatever.
commerce, yeah.
Big commerce, of course. The strategy is going to out oomph any of those little changes anyway. So understanding, the bigger picture around, okay, well, what is the opportunity? How is our, how do we best meet the market in a place where we can win? What does that mean from a structure of the site, from a collections depth, or just like you mentioned then, from just having different filters within the site that, all of a sudden open you up to a whole heap of new audience, having a really confident understanding. And this is something which I often ask brands when I'm, in New York or LA or wherever. It's just, could you describe for me your current SEO strategy in, say, 2 sentences? And I'm it's
They
not
can't.
many people can.
No.
And if you can't, do you have one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. So it's pretty scary. So as of this recording right now, we're launching this after recording before BFCM, but this is launching now, just nature of the publishing world. We're launching just after BFCM. What's your mindset now about brands that, because I always use, Inside Shopify uses the word postmortem. Whenever there was a campaign or some kind of a launch or some kind of something, and something like in an event, obviously an event is BFCM, the Super Bowl of kind of e-commerce. But we're listening to this recording now, kind of post BFCM. What's your mindset now of okay, successes, wins, failures, what do you go through with a brand? Because the reason I'm prefacing this question, because I'm trying to think about those that are listening today. Is there opportunity now based on the learnings from BFCM?
Is there opportunity based on the learnings from BFCM? I mean, there sure is. I mean, everyone who's listening right now set themselves a goal. And whether that's an overall, I'm sure they set a number of goals, but the biggest one is, okay, well, how many sales did we plan to achieve for this period? And then the post-mortem is the campaigns, and it's a channel by channel of, what performed, what underperformed, what overperformed. And to try to figure out, okay, well, where those gaps are. Is that a resource gap? Is it a strategy gap? Is it an execution gap? What was the reason that missed? So I think, having a methodical approach to it is what's really important. We go through a cyber weekend review with all of our clients. And what's tricky is it's not a big review, because in our clients, a lot of them are coming into Christmas. So you've got that, that next little shopping period. But, it's a small little deck which we present, which just lets them know, okay, well, we set some goals, we hit them, here's what went well, or we missed, and here's what we learned for our next sort of campaign that's happening. I think the robustness of your review methodology needs to match the, what you had up front at the start.
I see. So the idea is that, I guess, a great BFCM postmortem really would, I guess, maybe as we're listening, a week or two kind of right after Cyber Monday, and then you look at the metrics and you just kind of review, as you said, financial performance, I guess, is the number one thing, just the basic. I don't say the vanity URL or things like ROI and AOV and your CAC and ROAS and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's other things to think about too. How about your conversion rate, conversion metrics in general, cart abandonment rate. There's all the different things like that. And then there's the operational side of the business too, though. How well certain items were selling. Was the site designed in a certain way to move people along correctly to, was there stockouts? Was there a promotional impact on margin? I just spoke to someone a moment ago about, discounting and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that they brought up about BFCM was bulk pricing versus volume bundling. And those are different things, but there's still quantity discounts. And there's all these different things. And then obviously there's the channel analysis, which I think is really up your alley about the traffic sources. Where did all the money come from? Email and paid social and organic, or is it mobile versus desktop? And so I think there's a lot of moving parts. And I think the best thing is to actually take the intentional space to actually do it, and come up with a hypothesis based on the data.
Yeah, totally. And I think also this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but if you can get a third party to take a look at it, if you're going to have someone review their own work, great. They're probably going to find things. You get a third party, they're probably going to find some other things that, that probably wouldn't have come up otherwise. They might have seen it beforehand in the first place. So yeah, I definitely think that's key. But sort of back to my point around, because you are going from Black Friday, Cyber Monday into Christmas, we tend to find that you've got a top line review that gives you some strong, robust insights in the week or two afterwards. And then you've got a Q4 review after that, which kind of wraps it all together to figure out, okay, well, how do we go? What were our goals? Was the strategy on point? Was it not? Were there external macro environmental things that impacted us? So that's also an important part to it.
So it sounds like the goal really, I mean, I guess everyone's looking at this, but I guess the goal really isn't to celebrate your wins or mourn your losses. It's more about like extracting the insights out of what the hell happened during BFCM, and not to think about what I'm going to do next BFCM. It's like, no, what can I do for the remainder of Q4? I have this window. And especially after Christmas too, people get cash for Christmas. Like there's so much opportunity to make, and then the clearance opportunities that happen in January still with people with cash. There's so many ways of moving product. I think that's all part of this thing. And I know we talked in the green room kind of before recording, and that's something that you want to kind of offer, for select people that, they feel that they'd like to understand their post BFCM audit review. Maybe you could share some details on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, look, if you're a smaller, let's say a smaller Shopify business and you're just getting up off the ground and you've got a smaller budget, then I think there's probably a different process in terms of the type of review. But if you are, let's say a larger Shopify or a Shopify Plus business, you've got an agency or you've got some in-house resources, you're sort of past that DIY stage and you're really in the mode of having a team look after this. I'd be happy for my team at Impressive to providing you get in touch. We're at impressivedigital.com. Just mention this podcast, e-commerce Fastlane, and we'll provide a free audit of either your ad performance, so an ad account audit, or an SEO strategy audit to see, if there was something on that front that really left you lacking and left you short of your goals. So if you do come out of Cyber Weekend and you're not feeling like you executed and you just didn't meet your goals, that's where we'd be happy to provide an audit for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. I massively appreciate that. I think I like they can't see the forest for the trees. I think that's such a reality, having nice fresh eyes, looking at, either the organic side or the paid side and saying, hey, here's what we see, and contrasting and comparing it anonymously to other brands that we manage and saying that, you're playing in this space. So here's some opportunity that we believe. And then, then there might be an opportunity to work together. And if anything, you get an audit, you get to understand the business and, you get to move forward. And so I think that's great. Thank you, number one, for offering that. I think that's great. This has been really, really impactful. I mean, I joke on the show, but I'm on page 2 of notes. So that's a good episode.
That's great. Love it.
So I've learned a lot. I love your marketing strategy for your business about just working in tandem with both organic and paid. I think it's very unique. It doesn't mean that there aren't agencies that double down on either or do both or one or the other, but I think it's interesting that you're kind of synergizing them both together. And I think that's quite interesting, and not like forcing people to have to spend extra money. It's just understanding the performance of each campaign and how they're working in tandem with the overall goal of just driving more traffic and revenue to the business, right? So it's just business outcomes we're trying to get. So this is great. Well, thank you so much for recording, and have yourself a lovely day.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
All right, take care. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.